Well, you wouldn't know this if you're watching the mainstream media or even if you are relying on your information from the timeline on major tech social media websites. But there are major protests and a big uproar surrounding the case of Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, with, of course, the larger precedent being made here about freedom of speech. As just moments ago, Julian Assange had his first hearing on being extradited to the United States, which, of course, the Trump administration is pushing for. And moments ago, Julian Assange said that he does not consent to U.S. extradition, and he is vowing to fight all the charges against him. And it was an initial preliminary hearing. There's going to be a second hearing that's going to happen on May 30th, a third hearing in June that's going to be more substantive. But already, a lot of people are calling unfair conditions in this entire case. As you probably know from our video yesterday, Julian Assange was also sentenced to nearly a year in jail for, quote, skipping bail. There's also other gerrymandering that people are reporting on, saying that his court hearing room that was supposed to be a large courtroom was changed to a small courtroom so people don't see what's going on. There's been accusations of Julian Assange not being able to see his lawyer. And of course, this is an important case about journalism, in my opinion. Jason, what's your take on it from this first initial hearing that happened before we get into the larger protests that are happening around this as well?
Pretty standard stuff. I mean, he said he did not consent to being extradited to the United States. I think that's obvious. He also asked the Australian government to basically step in and protect him. I don't think that's going to happen either. I think that this is going to be a long, drawn-out court battle. It is separate from some of the other cases that we've seen some successes in the United Kingdom from not going and being extradited to the United States. Again, long court battles. In fact, Luke, you interviewed somebody in a similar situation who is a friend of Assange years ago.
Yeah, that's Lori Love and his lawyer, and the situation that they were going through was a very similar case. And luckily, Lori Love was never extradited to the United States. But you brought up a very important aspect here. Julian Assange is not an American citizen. He's being extradited to the United States as a foreign citizen of Australia. And Australia, again, they're not following the protocols which other countries would and saying, hey, this is actually our citizen. We should actually fire him. They're totally ignoring him like he's persona non grata. But the Lori Love case, which actually, interestingly, out of all networks, CNN actually covered in an interesting way, talked about recently in this video. Right, Jason?
Yeah, in the this is you talking to his lawyer years ago, but they were discussing his case. Now, him and another person, I believe, with the last name McKinnon, they ultimately got to stay in the United Kingdom, but they were citizens. The argument that's being made now is Julian Assange is not a United Kingdom citizen, so they don't really have skin in the game. On the flip side of that, he obviously believes that Assange is being made an example of, and he is. In fact, he talked about how he went and visited him just a couple weeks before he was basically picked up and dragged out like a dog. And he said, you got to understand, when you're having these hard times and you know they're about to get harder, that is extremely difficult to deal with. And he was dealing with that mental constraint.
I mean, yeah, look at what happened with, the huge amounts of pressure that the FBI that were bringing on Aaron Swartz that led to his eventual suicide. He was one of the major people behind Reddit, an internet pioneer who wanted the freedom of information, the freedom of resources to be available to everyone to make humanity better. And of course, he got drugged through the mud. Many people say viciously. Many people say in a way that led to his ultimate demise, led to his suicide because of the heavy-handed tactics by the U.S. administration trying to, of course, set an example here. And this is what they're doing here. Because, again, why is Assange being extradited? For what? For the crime of journalism that won him many awards? And, again, the public opinion here is pretty apparent. I mean, I think everyone here understands this larger case, even though a lot of pundits, a lot of people on the mainstream media don't want you to think so. But MSNBC recently held a poll, And they said, quote, should Julian Assange be prosecuted for involvement in WikiLeaks? The answer was yes, he's a criminal. No, he is a whistleblower and deserves protection. And 94% of the poll, 94% of the poll said, yeah, he's a whistleblower and he deserves protection. There's been a lot of protests. There's been a lot of synergy. Even with the Yellow Vest movement, there's been a faction of the Yellow Vest movement that literally took buses up from France, from Paris, all the way to London to, of course, support Julian Assange, to support this first extradition case, to support even an action that happened outside of the Ecuadorian embassy where Julian Assange's lawyers and the WikiLeaks staff were trying to get his possessions back. There was significant protest there. Al-Hawani even participated in a protest in Berlin around these matters. So again, these are global protests happening by many important figures, and the only people who don't really want to talk about this are people who, of course, are sucking up to Trump. And of course, are part of the bootlicking Trump alternative media, as I would even call them. Maybe a little bit harsh here, but that's the reality of the situation, because overall, he's been forgotten in a lot of people's minds, not only Donald Trump, who says he doesn't even know who WikiLeaks is, which is absolutely insane in my opinion. What do you think, Jason, about all the points that I just made there?
Well, again, you look at Assange, you look at this extradition hearing, you look at the precedents. I think we're going to be a long time coming before he actually gets extradited to the United States, probably a year and a half. I would
could take 2 years, Jason. Sorry to interrupt you. Could take 2 years as a legal proceeding here.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that the 50 weeks is kind of an insurance policy to make sure that he's actually in jail while this is all taking place. I don't know, man. It's tough. I think that if we allow this to happen, if we kind of lay down Luke and let this go on and then him be thrown in a prison cell in the United States or Guantanamo Bay or whatever we like, it's it for freedom of press. It's over. Yeah. It's officially done. The nail is in the coffin. We've already been fighting an uphill battle for censorship on the internet in the last 5-10 years, and it's accelerated. I mean, it's accelerating on a level that's exponential. And now to criminalize reporting, criminalize actual documentation that's out there, that's legitimate. You know, it's not fake news. And when it's real news, you better make it about fake news. You better make it about Russian espionage and stealing elections instead of what was in the emails, what's in the documents, the videotapes of Reuters reporters being gunned down, the reports of horrific things going on in Abu Ghraib prison that almost nobody to this day talks about. So once again, man, if this happens, the chilling effect is very, very real, and we're gonna have to fight tenfold for the most basic freedom of the press.
100% agree. They're throwing the book at him. They're trying to make an example out of him, pretty much saying, hey, journalists, you better not get any ideas and publish any information we don't want you to publish. And MSNBC's like, yes, master. Yes, we'll follow your establishment. Just tell us what to say. MSNBC, again, was favorable. I could say favorable to Julian Assange, especially during the Bush administration. Now, MSNBC is one of the largest attackers against WikiLeaks, and on their own website, 94% of people are like, hey, he's a whistleblower, he deserves protection. Again, there's one secret grand jury indictment against him. There's probably more here in the United States. This case is going to get a lot more complicated. Put on your seatbelt. This case is going to go on for a year and a half, 2 years, most likely. It's going to be a long, drawn out fight, but overall, from my assessment, I do see Assange being sent to the United States. I do see that happening. Will Trump be in office? Will Trump not be in office? That's the bigger question here, because again, Trump here and his administration are the ones behind this bigger orchestrated move, and we should understand that as well. That's my take on it. Anything else you want to say, Jason, or should I just close it off here?
Well, I want people to understand that he is being charged not with any real crime, but basically having Chelsea Manning find a password. He encouraged her to get a password so that Manning could hack into this information and then subsequently give it to WikiLeaks. He didn't hack anything. This is an unprecedented crime they're trying to bring against us, and we have to fight it full force.
Yeah, a 5-year sentence. That's what he's facing, a 5-year sentence. But obviously, there's other probably secret grand jury indictments, superseding indictments that no one else knows about. That's most likely the case here as well. But again, they're treating this in a very special form. That's why we need to call this out. That's why we're doing this reporting. That's why we're trying to do what the mainstream media is not doing and be better than they are and be on top of this information to tell you, hey, there actually is people who are protesting this. There's actual people who are in an uproar about issues of freedom, which of course is a dangerous idea that the social media technocrats and the mainstream media establishments don't want you to know. And if you appreciate it, you have to incentivize it now with your clicks. Again, you're not going to find us most likely in any timelines. It's harder and harder for people to find notifications. It's harder and harder. YouTube is recommending us less and less and less and less and less, obviously, because they want to squash us, and they are. And the only way to prevent that is with your support, either sharing this video or donating on wearechange.org/donate. Your support is more important than ever to this independent media broadcast. And that's why I say, love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.